Are you curious about emergency medicine, pharmacy, and whether or not it's something that you should consider as a career choice? Well, you're not alone. Lots of other people have thought the same thing. And in this video, we'll be diving into the subject. We'll be getting into the nitty-gritty details, the pros, the cons, the salary, the satisfaction, the job demand, and of course, the flexibility of having this career path as a pharmacist. If this is your first time here, welcome. Hey, this is a YouTube channel talking about pharmacy career stuff and the job market and where the opportunities are. We like to have fun here. If you're having fun, then hit that subscribe button. I don't know. So let's dive in and figure out, is emergency medicine worth pursuing for you? Before we dive into anything else, what is emergency medicine? Well, it is the department within most hospitals or healthcare systems where life hangs in the balance, where split decisions have to be made, and it's all about providing immediate care for that situation. Activities for pharmacists include things like rounding with physicians and other healthcare providers, providing medication therapy, both recommendations as well as education to patients, monitoring medical information and documentation, and of course, keeping track of all those high-risk medications. We don't know how many pharmacists are in this space, but we know that according to the Board of Pharmacy Specialties, there's approximately 460 people with a certification in that space. And I would imagine there's probably well over 2,000 or 3,000 pharmacists practicing in emergency medicine. There's typically three ways that people get into emergency medicine, and that is getting a PGY 1 or 2, and then getting experience in a hospital. Lots of pharmacists get practice, maybe as a staff hospital pharmacist, and then work their way into the emergency room if that is something that you find compelling or interesting. At the time of this video, there are 67 PGY 2 emergency medicine programs that are out there. Then they turn out probably around 60 to 100 different emergency medicine practicing PGY2 trained pharmacists. In context, there are thousands of PGY1 programs, and many of those are within hospitals, and for lots of different departments, that can be enough, more than enough training to do a job of an emergency room pharmacist. Typical job titles include emergency medicine pharmacist, emergency department pharmacist, and emergency department clinical pharmacy specialist. Try those the next time you look on Indeed. Let's talk about salary. For emergency medicine, what do you think the average pharmacist gets paid? Put your number below. I'd love to see how close you get. According to payscale.com, they report an average of $122,000. ZipRecruiter reports the average being at $126 and shares that Massachusetts, Washington, and Colorado are the highest paying states for this position. We found one job in a remote place in Iowa, of all places, that they said it was $116 to $139K. I'm guessing they're allowing for experience with that and training, but we all know what it's like in these specialty positions, because here's the truth, in most of these small places, there is not a lot of training being provided to these pharmacists because they don't have a large staff. So I think you got a lot of wiggle room here for negotiating power when you take these kinds of jobs. So let's give salary a score here. Given the fact that the average is around 120, 130 is pretty awful. If you have to go through a 1-year residency or even 2 years residency to get offered a job that you could go get paid the same amount, if not more, without a residency, like in a retail or a hospital staff position, I'm not going to rate this score highly. Like, that is such a bummer to me. If you compare physicians to pharmacists, almost every single kind of specialty physician role is higher paid than typical general practice. It is not true in pharmacy. For those reasons, I'm going to give the salary score a 5 out of 10. Now let's break down satisfaction. If you're considering emergency medicine, you're probably wondering in your head, okay, I love stress, so how long can I handle this? Will this be something that is like a roller coaster ride and I'm going to love every day because it's a new adventure? Or is this going to last forever? Am I going to always feel this good? I feel good practicing emergency medicine. So let's break down what we know about this. Unfortunately, what we know based on published research is that year-round people struggle with burnout. In typical hospital settings, these range anywhere from 50 to 70%. The majority of emergency medicine pharmacists said burnout was the #1 issue with their satisfaction. In this specific study, they identified around 68% of the participants were suffering from burnout. You can preach all you want about wanting to help others, but eventually, over time, when enough people are yelling at you, are in constant pain, and they're mad at you for trying to help them, that wears down a person's soul. The #1 reported issue within emergency medicine from this study was depersonalization. It's basically this idea like people are no longer people, they're problems. When I was burned out as an ambulatory care pharmacist, I knew that I was suffering from burnout when a patient called me at the end of the day, and I dreaded that moment. I just wanted to be home. I wanted to get out. I no longer was treating that person like they were a patient or like a family member. I treated that person like a problem. And I can imagine that happening quite easily because when you're in emergency medicine, everyone's hair's on fire. And imagine that happening quite easily in emergency medicine over time. If everyone is coming to you with their most urgent and dire problems and they're in pain or they're mad and they are probably taking that frustration out on you as a provider, well, that's gonna hurt you. But over time, one bad patient experience after another, and you begin to learn to separate yourself from it. And people who are suffering are coming to you, and you learn over time to separate yourself out from that emotional pain. And this can lead to depersonalization. It doesn't happen to everyone, and it's not like it's the end of the world. It's something to be aware of going in, because it doesn't matter where you go in pharmacy or in healthcare. Burnout is everywhere. Being aware of it is really half the battle, so that you can learn to either prevent it or get out of the work environment that's causing it. But what do people actually say about it as a career path? Well, we dove into Reddit and found a few people who claim to be in emergency medicine, and they said things like, it's probably one of the most satisfying and fulfilling opportunities as a pharmacist. People are citing that you get constant learning opportunities. And I know that for a lot of people, the mundane feeling like you're just a cog in a wheel is awful. And having that change of pace of constantly being challenged to learn new things is exciting. It's challenging. And especially if you're driven by your own curiosity, it can be a great work environment for you. One pharmacist said, "Not a single day goes by that someone doesn't thank me. RNs, physicians, especially patients." It's important to note that for satisfaction, it is highly dependent on the hospital, the organization. If you have a toxic work environment throughout, if people are leaving in droves, they can't keep people, then you probably want to avoid that at all costs. But there are healthy and great places to work in healthcare. You can find these places by going to Glassdoor and looking at reviews. We looked at a couple of hospitals like Valleywise, which had a 3.6. But the thing that to note about that is that the senior management rating was the lowest. This is really common in hospital institutions. They're often not run by healthcare individuals, people with more like business backgrounds, and that at times can kind of take the care out of healthcare. It's not always true, but let's be honest. Healthcare is in a weird pickle right now where people who are not practitioners are kind of running the show, and it's often focused on the bottom line. That's a whole other discussion that we're not going to get into. We also looked at Stanford, which reported a 3.9, which is a great rating for a hospital. Meanwhile, Bay State Health had a 3.5, and this time it was senior management, and work-life balance was also the lowest. Look, for the right person, I'm actually going to give satisfaction score a 7 out of 10, and here's specifically why. If you go on a rotation within an emergency department and you love it, you love that high-stakes situation, you love the patient interaction, the team interaction, and if it's a healthy team, there's great potential to really enjoy what you're doing. It is important to note that, there's going to be places that are toxic, that have high stress, there's poor communication going on, and for those reasons, that's why it doesn't get a higher score. But note that, if that's the environment for you, go for it, do it. It can be a lot of fun. Think of emergency medicine kind of like the Avengers. Like, who doesn't want to be a hero to swoop in and save the day? Doesn't always feel that way, but like, come on. Look, if I break my leg tomorrow and I go to the emergency room, they are my heroes because I have no way outside of myself to fix my broken leg. I would be forever crippled if I couldn't go to the hospital. So who doesn't enjoy being a hero? But how demand are these heroes? Well, we did a little bit of digging. We found some interesting results. On Indeed, we found that there were 380 jobs posted for emergency medicine pharmacists. And approximately 72% of these jobs were entry-level ones. So you only need like a PGY-1 for most circumstances. Meanwhile, on ZipRecruiter, we found 260 jobs available. And interestingly, it does seem like there are sign-on bonuses available for these clinical positions, but it's not near the extent of what like retail is experiencing with the $40, $50, $60, even $100,000 sign-on bonuses. Look, there are not many jobs. By comparison, there's like 20,000 plus jobs right now in community pharmacy. We're talking about a niche job. But the ones that are available do not have a whole lot of applicants. If you go to linkedin.com and you type in these keywords, you'll see that the vast majority of these positions have not a lot of applicants. One thing to take note though is just the general market overall. Right now, hospitals, especially smaller ones, are facing closures and buyouts. That means consolidation. This trend changes over time. Bull and bear markets influence these things. But overall, if you are going into this field, you can generally assume that you've got a fairly secure career path. You will likely not struggle to find another position, but you will probably have to move, as most major metropolitan areas, don't have a ton of hospitals available that are normally owned by the same chains or the same groups. So just keep this in mind that, like, yes, this is an in-demand job, but there's not like thousands of jobs available for you. Given these factors, I'm going to give the demand score a 7 out of 10. Let's talk about the magic factor, flexibility. There's a lot of things that go into this, whether it's transitioning in and out of this field. I first tend to think about the schedule. Every hospital is different, so it's hard to say blanket statements because we have talked with people who have gotten emergency medicine jobs that have 9-to-5 schedules. That's awesome. Monday through Friday, while others have wild and wonky things that they hate, where it's like 3 on, 3 off, 4 on, 2 off, or working midnights, or being on call. I would not rate these schedules highly for the flexibility factor just because it's kind of a part of the game that you're on call, that it's a little bit more stressful. It's hard to predict things. You may be working holidays. You may be working evenings, especially when you're in the residency part of the program. One of the perks of emergency medicine is that it's fast-paced.
I don't think you have any idea how fast I really am.
It's action-oriented. It is, hey, this is happening right now and we have to come up with a plan to deal with it. And that kind of dopamine kick can create a lot of energy for you, and you may get a lot of fulfillment out of it, which is nice. But on the flip side of that, it's pretty easy to take that stress home with you unless you create really powerful boundaries. Just like with most of the other clinical pharmacy career paths, you can somewhat easily transition into other fields, whether that's the pharmaceutical industry, academia, consulting. It's possible to do those things because of your clinical background. As a career coach, what we really specialize in is helping people figure out, like, okay, what makes you amazing, what makes you special, and how can you brag about this without feeling too braggadocious, but being proud of what you are and what you do, and positioning yourself as a top candidate. It isn't impossible to do, but it's certainly something to consider. Going down this career path of emergency medicine, especially with all the training involved, really means solidifying that, hey, this is my career path. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I love doing. Given these factors, I'm going to give flexibility a 6 out of 10. And now time for the final score for emergency medicine pharmacy. What did we do? So the salary was kind of a bummer. I gave it a 5 out of 10 just because you're doing all of this training to get paid practically the same amount of what you could be paid as a hospital or retail pharmacist. That's a bummer. But then again, 120 is nothing really to sneeze at for someone who just graduated school. Satisfaction, I gave it a 7 out of 10 with the strong caveat that you need to be someone who enjoys this stressful work environment. It's not always true, but it's high stress and it can be rewarding, but burnout is very common. For the demand, I gave it a 7 out of 10 because this is something that's super, 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 super niche. And there's not a lot of jobs available, but there are consistently jobs that are open and they don't have a whole lot of applicants. And then finally, for flexibility, we gave it a 6 out of 10, simply because of the wonky schedules, the somewhat flexible nature of you being able to go into it and then out, but it's not a terribly high score. That leads a final score for emergency medicine of a 6 out of 10. Not one of the higher clinical pharmacy career paths that we recommend. It's not something we see a lot of people going into. And in fact, we've seen a lot of people more so leave emergency medicine due to burnout. So what did you think? Were we too harsh or not harsh enough? I've seen more people want to leave emergency medicine than getting into it. Obviously, we see hundreds of people go into these programs that lead to emergency medicine career paths, but we see quite a few people leaving it because of the burnout. Did you enjoy this video? Did we miss some very important factors about emergency medicine? I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Please comment and let us know, what career path should we do next? Let me wrap up by saying what I think is most important about emergency medicine is that you need to have an experience with it and feel like you could love this. You need to be on a rotation doing it. You need to be in a PGY1 residency and have that experience and be like, okay, I think I could love this. I think I could see myself doing this for a time. But it's not wrong to feel also well, I can do this and then I could leave. I could go be in pharma or academia, or I could go do research or consulting. I can leave this and try something else. Just because you're choosing this career path doesn't mean that you're forever going to be that thing. I know that a lot of residents choose these career paths and they wonder if am I going to love this forever? Forever is a long time, okay? I mean, not even 10 years ago, I thought I was going to be an AmCare pharmacist for most of my career, and I was coming to face with the fact that I really didn't like it. Preferences change, and you can too. Thanks for watching this video, and until I see you in the next one, take care.